Warning: the following video contains personal opinions and may contain potential bias. Anyone sensitive to someone else's opinion may want to turn away now. But thanks for watching anyways. So previously I did a video on the top 5 banned Pokemon episodes. And while it does look pretty bad to have an episode banned for one reason or another, it got me thinking about the other side of the spectrum. Episodes, or at least plot lines, that were implied or even intended to air, and for whatever reason, never did. So today, we'll be talking about the top 5 abandoned plots in the Pokemon anime. Now, not every point that I'm going to be talking about throughout this list is going to be something that actually had a confirmed episode set to air. Some of these will be plot lines that seem like they were heavily implied to have a bigger role throughout the story, and simply for whatever reason, never did. Might have been brought up once or twice thereafter the fact, but otherwise had no lasting impact on the story. While others might have been completely or almost finished episodes that simply never aired, and eventually found themselves retconned entirely. That's what we'll be talking about today. There aren't as many instances of abandoned plot points as there are banned episodes, but nevertheless, I think this list will be a lot of fun. So, with all of that said, welcome everyone to the Silver League's top 5 abandoned plots in the Pokemon anime. Number 5. Groto's struggle with no longer being fast, from Diamond and Pearl. So in the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl anime, the main quirk, so to speak, of Ash's Turtwig was the fact that it could run really fast. Sort of like a weird twist on the story of the turtle and the hare, except in this version the turtle could actually outpace the hare. And the quirk in itself was pretty handy during its time as a Turtwig. But eventually there came that point in the story where Ash's Turtwig evolved into Grotle. And this is where things got interesting, because as we saw, this newly evolved Grotle was struggling with the new biology that it suddenly had. Not very often up to this point had the series actually explored the effects of evolution on a Pokemon's body, and here we were seeing a direct representation of that. And this has always been one of my very favorite episodes for that very reason, but also because of an other element. In this episode, Grotle got very depressed over the fact that it wasn't fast anymore, and later on during the same episode, Paul's Torterra would actually help Ash's Grotle and teach it new ways to handle its different biology. That in itself was really interesting. It also showed a potential bridge between Ash's Pokemon and Paul's. That in itself was all really cool, and given that this happened during the middle of the Diamond and Pearl series, when the rivalry between Ash and Paul was already one of the most interesting and fascinating things ever, you have this very cool added element to it, and unfortunately, it doesn't really go anywhere after this. Because by the time Ash's Grotle would evolve into a Torterra itself, it would learn to move Rock Climb, which was basically its way to effectively circumvent its lack of speed by essentially giving itself a giant platform of rock that it could literally climb up and then attack the opponent from there. Yeah, Torterra still basically had the whole speed quirk that it always had, effectively giving it a jolly nature in many ways, and it also kind of lost a lot after that, and arguably became one of Ash's worst Pokemon throughout the Sinnoh saga. Which was really unfortunate because he had a really interesting character going on, and this whole potential bridging between Ash and Paul, with both of them having the Grass Starter as one of their main Pokemon on their team, it was interesting. It was really cool. It was so fascinating to have this moment, and a little disappointing that by the end of the series, it proved to not really go anywhere. Still a really cool moment, just a shame that it didn't really have much of a payoff, unlike, say, the Infernape storyline. Number 4. Trip/Shooty's motivation, from Best Wishes. Oh boy, already picking on Best Wishes, huh? Well yeah, sue me, it had a lot of problems, and this one is honestly one of the more subtle problems, though it does become quite the glaring one when we get to the Unova League. So from the very beginning, it was kind of hard to not instinctively compare Shooty to Paul. Because let's be honest, their base concept art when we first saw it looked pretty similar. I mean, not identical, but it definitely feels like it was cut from the same cloth, where once again we had another rival who was fairly rude to Ash, but for different reasons. Where Shooty's rudeness was more almost subtle racism, where he was basically prejudging Ash for being from, in quotes, the boonies. But the thing is, Shooty was willing to help Ash, like during moments when he showed Ash that his Oshawott had its eyes closed while doing Aqua Jet. That showed that Shooty did have some nice qualities to him. And then Shooty's character gets a lot more interesting when we factor in Older. Because it turns out that when Shooty was really young, he met Older at I guess some kind of meet and greet or festival, where Shooty was petting Older's Bouffalante, and Older took notice of him. Shooty even said he wanted to become a big strong trainer like him one day, and become the next champion. And Older actually promised Shooty that he would hold on to his champion title until Shooty was strong enough to challenge him for it. And this is the thing that motivated Ncuti throughout his entire life leading up to this point. And that's actually really cool. It's really admirable. I love the writing potential in that. And then it gets even more interesting when Ncuti finally meets Uldr once again, but at the same time has another encounter with Ash. And what I love about this particular episode is that we see Uldr is kind of portrayed as, well, a bit of a loaf. He has amazing skill in battle, that can't be understated. But outside of that, his own Bouffalant corrects him, he hits on the officer Jennys, he kind of acts like in some ways a wise elder who's a bit of a drunk. And then it gets even more interesting when he recognizes the potential in Ash, who kind of, I guess in many ways, mirrors his own mannerisms when he was a youthful lad, but actually forgot the promise that he made to Ncuti. And of course he would, because that promise that he made to young little Ncuti was just him talking big to a child who admired him. So of course he wouldn't commit that promise to memory, and of course someone like Uldr would probably recognize Ash's skill, since Ash is all about the heart and caring for your Pokemon. This whole episode provided such an interesting dynamic to this sort of rivalry, where the very thing that motivated Ncuti to become a Pokemon trainer was effectively a lie. And the series doesn't really do anything with this. Ncuti and Ash's penultimate rival battle is a joke. It's a complete laugh. It has no themes, it's just a 1v1, and none of it takes advantage of the fact that Ncuti's motivation was a complete farce. Nothing about any disappointment he might have had in Uldr ever applies to his career as a Pokemon trainer, from the point that he sees Uldr once again to the rival battle, which is pretty much the last point we ever see of him in any meaningful sense outside of anime endings. It's really disappointing that this plotline went nowhere. It was a very interesting idea that could have done so much more to elevate Ncuti's character, and nothing is done with it. Nothing. Well, I mean, it's not the worst thing that Best Wishes has ever done. It's just a very, very disappointing one. But hey, while on the topic of Best Wishes, number 3. Team Rocket's special assignment from Best Wishes. Oh boy, this one's interesting, and there's actually a lot to unpack with this one, or at least a lot that I could speculate on. What we know is that from the very beginning of Best Wishes, and alluded to at the end of Diamond and Pearl, Team Rocket effectively got a promotion, so to speak, for their success of, well, taking the credit for getting rid of Team Galactic. And as a result of that success, they were given a special assignment in the Unova region, where they got new uniforms, a new attitude, and weren't in every episode, and they were actually competent. They had competent plans that didn't just involve getting a giant robot for the sole purpose of capturing a Pikachu. They had plans, and they frequently got mission updates. It was all alluding to something big, something massive. Something so big that it actually required the assistance of Ash and company, who were going to be transported by helicopter to tackle the problem that was going on in the desert. And the very next episode to air, instead, was after these supposed episodes were going to happen. Team Rocket abandoned the black uniforms, went back to the classic white, and from there we didn't quite have bumbling Team Rocket back, but we definitely had a Team Rocket that was not the hard-focused Team Rocket that we had beforehand. So what happened here? Well, these two episodes were meant to introduce Team Plasma. We know this because they actually released previews for these episodes, which did show us the animation of Team Plasma in the black and white 1 uniforms. This would also be the episode that would have Team Rocket, not just our trio of Team Rocket, but Team Rocket the whole organization going up against Team Plasma, and presumably kicking off the actual Team Plasma storyline that would have spread out throughout the course of Best Wishes. So with all of this build-up, why did they never air this two-parter? Well, literally a week before these episodes were set to air, Japan was struck by the, and pardon my terrible mispronunciation of this, the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, as well as the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster. Now this was a huge incident, a massive disaster, with the Japanese National Police Agency report confirming over 15,000 deaths, over 6,000 injured, and over 2,000 people missing across 20 prefectures. And a March 2018 agency report listing over 121,000 buildings had completely collapsed, with over 280,000 being half collapsed, and another over 726,000 buildings being partially damaged. So because this two-parter in particular dealt with earthquakes and natural disasters, pretty much everyone involved felt that it would be in bad taste to air the episode of this nature so soon, literally a week after such a terrible thing happened. They pulled the episode, it never saw the light of day, and was pretty much effectively retconned from the series. I'm not kidding, over a year later we would see something of this nature show up later on down the road, except it was effectively a tie-in to Black and White 2. Borrowing elements from Black and White 2 such as, well, entire areas being covered in ice, while also tying in the Meloetta storyline. It didn't feature Team Plasma at all, but it did feature one of the very, very few times that Ash would actually face off against Giovanni in any sort of direct sense. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, this is actually the very first and only time that Ash would actually battle Giovanni, unless you want to count the interactions they had in Mewtwo Returns. And what makes that two-parter interesting is that if you compare certain scenes from that two-parter to the previews we saw for the Team Plasma versus Team Rocket two-parter, they would actually reuse visual assets from that Team Plasma two-parter and incorporate it into the finale of the Meloetta arc. It's interesting, it's definitely resourceful and taking advantage of the animation assets that you already had prepared, but it also 100% cements that these episodes are completely lost, completely abandoned. They are in the void because they literally got retconned and retooled into the Meloetta story arc finale that we eventually got. Is it better or worse? It's not too bad, but it really does make you wonder what could have been. Because would we have had more Team Plasma stuff throughout the rest of the series? Would we have seen Team Plasma transition from the knightly uniforms to basically being a terrorist organization? Would N have been incorporated in the story much sooner? There's a lot of things about this abandoned story arc that really makes me wonder. And I know it's kind of interesting that it's only number 3, but really with it being retconned and retooled, it doesn't place as high due to that infamy being somewhat watered down, though it really is unfortunate because it really makes me wonder what could have been had the earthquakes and tsunamis and nuclear meltdowns never happened, and we got this story arc, and presumably maybe kept the direction that we had in the early parts of Best Wishes, which again got lightened up pretty much immediately after this story arc happened. It makes sense why they made things a bit more cheerful, because they want to make kids happy and have fun after the very scary stuff they've been through. But all of that said, again, it just makes you wonder. It makes you wonder, and it's a shame that it had to get tossed away, but really, it was for the best. It would have been in bad taste. So let's move on to something a bit more cheerful. Number 2. The GS Ball. Oh, the GS Ball. The good old GS Ball. Old school Pokemon fans are more than familiar with this old plot device that proved to be absolutely worthless and just go nowhere. Way back at the end of the Kanto saga, Professor Oak tasked Ash with visiting Professor Ivy so that he could retrieve the GS Ball and bring it back to Professor Oak so that he could study it. And then once we get to Professor Ivy, we discover that the GS Ball can't be opened no matter what she does, and it can't be transported either. So that means that Ash has to bring it back by foot, which in turn explains why Ash had to go all the way out to the Orange Islands to go get it. However, at that point, Ash got caught up in the Orange Island League, Brock decided and would later regret to stay with Professor Ivy, being replaced by Tracy for a season, but eventually Ash did complete his journey through the Orange Island League and brought the GS Ball back to Professor Oak in Kanto. Find out that he can't do anything about it, and then to be tasked once again with taking the GS Ball all the way to Johto, where Ash would eventually deliver the GS Ball to Kurt, and we never hear of it again. So what the heck happened? What was the big deal about this thing? Why was it so important? Why was it such a mystery? Well, the games have the potential answer to that. You see, in the Japanese versions of Pokemon Crystal, players could obtain the GS Ball, a special event item. And after obtaining the GS Ball, the player would need to take it to Kurt, who will analyze it for a day. After it's been analyzed and returned, Elix Forest would become restless, and the player would have to place the GS Ball on the Elix Forest Shrine, at which point it would summon a level 30 Celebi. So basically, the GS Ball was supposed to contain Celebi. So why didn't that actually happen? The short answer is, Pokemon Forever. Because as stated in a 2008 interview with the Pokemon director, the GS Ball was indeed originally going to contain Celebi, and it was going to be a part of a big arc within the Johto anime. But then they decided to make Celebi the star of Pokemon Forever, and felt that having a storyline within the anime was a bit redundant, and thus pretty much scrapped the entire storyline, and literally just hoped that viewers would eventually forget about it. And that's the end of it. They made the somewhat logical decision to feature Celebi in the 4th Pokemon movie, while also gutting plot lines I guess they had in place for a very long time. And all I could think is, how long did you know that Celebi was going to be in the GS Ball? How far in advance was that plot line thought up? Was it last minute? You would imagine that for as long as they were hyping up the GS Ball, that they would have had this planned, right? I mean, I know the GS Ball still serves as a purpose to get Ash to travel around the Pokemon world effectively and meet all these people and go on all these wonderful adventures, but you literally gave us the Pokemon equivalent of the mystery box. This mysterious thing that we are wondering what's inside, and it's nothing. It goes nowhere. In fact, it's not even that there's nothing inside the box. We don't even find out what's in the box. You're telling us Celebi was in the box? or it might have been in the box. Just why? Why would you do this? Why would you waste our time like this? Why would you cock tease us like this? It's just, it all goes nowhere. It's just abandoned. And I literally hoped that viewers would forget about it. That baffles me. This actually was an abandoned plot point. This is literally the truest to an abandoned plot point that we could get on this list, because the director of the show even says they hoped that we would forget about it. I mean, we moved on, but I don't think many people truly forgot about it. It still remains a bit of a humorous joke, at least to me, because it is kind of funny looking back at how much this was hyped up and how it literally went nowhere, but that can be said about a lot of things within the Johto anime. What's that? I'm saying negative things about the Gen 2 anime? And to a lesser extent potentially the games? Well, I mean, I have very, very vague memories of the Johto anime. Love the third movie. Can't say I have that much love for the anime itself outside of the Pokemon League, but that's something we can talk about at a later point. But yeah, the GS Ball. They literally hoped we would forget about it, but we never did. Though I like to think most of us moved on from it though. And the number one abandoned plot in the Pokemon anime is Zekrom from Best Wishes. Oh my god. This one hurts. It hurts a lot. It's the last time I'm kicking Best Wishes to the ground anytime soon, I swear. Maybe. Possibly. I'm not sure. But, wow. If the GS Ball was bad because it actually had an official statement saying that it was abandoned, this one, though there's no official statement saying what the heck happened here, I think, I still call this the worst and most egregious abandoned plotline ever within the Pokemon anime, just because, holy Arceus, does this just deflate a lot of the things that Best Wishes was just hanging on desperately to possibly try and redeem it. So the first episode of Best Wishes infamously has a scene where Zekrom effectively takes Pikachu's high level away and makes it weak, at least for the first episode or so. It's not really a lingering plot point, which is probably the first problem right there, because myself and many others like to make the joke that this was basically how the anime literally nerfed Ash's Pikachu after it was able to freaking tie with a Latios! And it would actually make sense, assuming there was a grander purpose for it. Zekrom shows up, reduces the strength of Ash's Pikachu, and they have to build themselves back up. That would be a really good plot point. And for the first episode, Ash's Pikachu couldn't use electric attacks. There was a lot of drama, a lot of intrigue in that. But this is fairly quickly mitigated, which is fine. Ash loses to a Snivy. Again, you can handwave it because Pikachu is in a weakened state. Makes sense. It sets off a chain reaction of Shooty having a low opinion of Ash. Sets us up for potential stories down the road. Sounds potentially quite interesting. Zekrom never plays a part in the entire show ever, including the actual Team Plasma arc, which predominantly features Reshiram. I repeat, the Team Plasma arc that deals with truth, ideals, and all that jazz, which we sort of got in the anime, but was featured pretty heavily in the games themselves, does not feature the opposite end to Reshiram, does not feature the ideals to the truth. That's brought up in the terrible, terrible Victini movie, but not here. And you want to know what to me makes it even more mind-boggling? Ash actually brings up Zekrom to N, and N actually remarks at the fact that Zekrom showed up before him, proving that this has to be a big deal, right? That it'll have some kind of payoff, right? Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Reshiram is summoned. Zekrom has no relevance to the entire finale of the N arc, which, by the way, was incredibly disappointing. And the last nail in the coffin of any goodwill that Best Wishes had before giving us a bloody filler arc. Oh my god. Zekrom was the last nail that so many of us were holding on to in the vain hope that it would go anywhere, that it would amount to anything, that despite all the bad things that Best Wishes had going, that, you know, we could sympathize with the fact that they had to change plot lines, they had to change tone generally. They had to change a lot of things because of just things out of their control, which I completely get, but with no payoff to Zekrom, it hurts. And the fact that it was well past the point of retconning stuff from the Team Plasma versus Team Rocket stuff, it makes me wonder if they ever had a plan, or if the idea was just Zekrom shows up and that's it. Nothing. To me, this is the number one abandoned plot line, because it was the longest lingering thread that we were holding out so much hope on, and it went nowhere. It could have possibly given the series any redeeming qualities. It felt like it was setting things up right from episode 1. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The GS Bowl at the end of the day had positives. It gave us the Orange Island League. It was a reason to go to Johto. It was a reason to travel. Zekrom showing up from the first episode set up the potential of interesting storylines, and it never went anywhere. It was abandoned like everything else, but unlike plotlines that deal with earthquakes, I feel like any Zekrom story that was there could have still been told, especially if you're going to mention it. The Team Rocket vs Team Plasma plotline was never brought up again. It was phased out of the canon. Zekrom remained canon, it remained plot relevant, and it went nowhere. That's the worst part of it all. They didn't retcon it, and they did not deliver at all. One can even argue that it might have been a homage to Ho-Oh. But no, it wasn't even that. Just... And that was my list of the top 5 abandoned plots in the Pokemon anime, and I thank you all for watching. Sorry for any of my potential rambling nonsense, but the stories behind some of these abandoned plots are actually quite interesting to talk about, and I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments down below. If there's other abandoned plots that I might have overlooked, let me know too, because I'm actually quite curious if I, well, forgot any, or if there's any others that you feel really strongly about. If you want to support my channel and see more videos like this, whether it's the top 10s, top 5s, training thoughts, let's plays, or everything else we got going on in the Silverlink networks, please consider supporting my Patreon, since even a single dollar goes a long way to just making all of this possible. And I couldn't thank the Patreon supporters that I already have enough. You guys are amazing, and I love you all so much. But yeah, I got a lot more to work on, and I better hop to all of that. So in the meantime, guys, I'm Silver August, and I'll catch you all next time.